Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's so wonderful to see you all here today. I'm Priyanka, and it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you all to the Real Estate and Business Excellence Awards 2021, hosted by AdSync Advertising Dubai. Media partner, CNN News 18, powered by Justo Real Fintech Private Limited. Today, we not only acknowledge and reward extraordinary talent, but also bring to you the conclave on Reality Decoded, wherein our eminent panelists will engage you in a riveting knowledge session. We have an amazing panel on Reality Decoded, wherein our panelists will discuss and share the outlook for Indian real estate in a post-COVID world. While 2020 has been an unprecedented year globally, it has been able to create certain unique opportunities for the real estate sector. As new trends emerge, the realty market is not going to be the same in a post-COVID era. To throw light on this, I would like to welcome our panelists, Dr. Harshal Savla, Managing Director, M Realty. Can we have a round of applause for him, ladies and gentlemen? Joining him in the panel discussion is Mr. Kamlesh Thakur, co-founder and director, Srishti Group. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Kamlesh Thakur. We also have with us today Mr. Yash Paleja. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Yash Paleja. Next, we have with us Mr. Chaitanya Seth. Can we have a round of applause for Mr. Chaitanya Seth, ladies and gentlemen? And lastly, the moderator of the discussion, Mr. Deepak Wazrani, an industry veteran with over 25 years of experience across banking, wealth management, private equity, and real estate in India and the Middle East. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Deepak Wazrani. A very warm welcome to you all, gentlemen. We hope this session would trigger lively discussion and help us all achieve clarity on what is known versus what is speculation or even exaggeration. Over to you, Mr. Deepak.
Thank you, Priyanka. Very warm welcome to the eminent panelists. I think we have an excellent team here sitting. It's a mix of the veterans from the developer fraternity, from the sales side and from the consulting side as well. So I think we're going to have a wonderful session, hopefully. And so I think let's get going without much ado. The first question I think I have on my list is Kamalji, and I'm here just going to go random. I mean, it's not by the order. Kamalji, starting with you, because you were an industry veteran yourself, which I think this question everybody would want to know and hear, and others can definitely chip in and butt in here. Once Kamalji is spoken, has the COVID-19 pandemic forever altered the way we live and work? And how would you assess the impact of the pandemic on the real estate sector, sir?
Yeah, definitely the impact has been unprecedented, and it's not over yet. We are still learning new things. What I've been told that the journey of vaccine, even the manufacturers are trying to figure out the efficacies and the spacing between the two doses. Similarly, the COVID has been such a big impact on our lives. From, as a developer, from strategy point of view to think about future, and as an empathetic developer, when the workers were not there, when there was a migration happened, and the challenges of getting them to their places, and once they were there, and when the work unlock happened, to get them back.
Yeah, that's been quite challenging, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was a lot of learning experience. Regarding sales, we have seen a lot of positive upticks, which is a pleasant surprise. We were discussing about a lot of things happened. I can say that planetary alignment took place.
Sure.
With the right type of decisions being taken by every possible stakeholder, including government, the stamp duty reduction,
right,
the premium reduction, developers coming forward and absorbing some of the price
sure,
escalations. So things have changed. and biggest catchment has been the millennials, which
Yeah.
I feel there has been a change of trend, the perspective, the way the millennials used to be advocating having rental apartment vis-a-vis ownership of apartment. Now I see a shift in the mindset. They are definitely wanting to own an apartment. So that's a big push for residential sector.
Sure.
Coming to non-residential, work from home, commercial and IT sectors, there is lot of debate going on.
Sure.
Work from home has taken lot of disruptions. Just before COVID, everybody was chasing commercial, 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 and residential was kind of a second push.
Taken a back seat, yeah.
And trends have changed overnight dramatically. So
Sure.
yeah, so it's definitely impacted and created some disruptions, but disruptions are the way to do business.
Absolutely. I think COVID also, a lot of people who were fence sitters, a lot of people who were on rentals, who lived their life on rent and thought that it's not a great idea to block a huge investment and move on. The millennials, as you rightly mentioned, I think that big learning has come to the life that एक छत होनी चाहिए सर पे, रोटी कपड़ा मकान जैसा हम बोलते हैं.
Yeah.
मकान बहुत जरूरी है रोटी कपड़े के साथ, and a self-owned house and timing couldn't be better, like you rightly mentioned.
It's not only ownership of house, everybody values having that little extra space in the house.
Absolutely.
One extra room, which, because everybody is working from home, studying from home, women, men, children, you have multiple desktops, laptops, and, coexisting between utensils and doing your house chores and managing children and working has thrown open an absolutely new lifestyle.
Sure, sir.
Everybody
Absolutely,
is
Kamlesh.
needing that extra room.
Space, yeah. In fact, a lot of thought process of developers also have changed and got aligned to the COVID pandemic situation of the work home concept. People are now actually creating, when they're curating their houses, when they're making new houses, they're ensuring there's a small space curated. I'm sure, both would love to add on this, because that's where the trend is looking at, moving on. Hopefully, we should not see more of this coming, and everybody wants the pandemic to come to an end. But I think that concept of the thought of putting that extra space when you manufacture, I'm sure would have come on into fore now.
So absolutely. Good morning to all. Luxury has made a comeback. That extra bit of space. So, in between for last 5 years, there was this whole trend, how small the houses could be made. So, and we had reached obscene levels of measurements where the whole idea was to make the smallest possible house.
Sure.
I mean, we would have outbeat nano car as well over there in terms of measurements. But now suddenly space is being valued. I think people spending time in their house and realizing that bit of extra space, maybe as a multi-purpose room, a multi-utility room, is clearly being valued upon. So I think a lot of dynamics have opened up, which we'll discuss in the course of the panel.
Great. Thank you so much. I think it was very valuable inputs. The second question I have on the technology bit, I think everybody can butt in, because I think technology is the new thing. And real estate, I believe, was one industry that where technology was not very dominant as a player, which came in. But I think post-pandemic, a lot of things have completely changed. So how has that played out? Yash, you want to take that on first, and then maybe everybody else can.
Thank you so much, Deepak, for the question, and very good morning to everyone.
And if you can just, talk about the pre-RERA technology and post-RERA, how the transformation has really come up. So that will really help the audience to understand better.
Sure, pre-RERA technology. So I'm sure I've set the tone there, but thanks for the question, and good morning, everyone in the audience. I think it's a wonderful mix of audience, and good morning to everyone in the panel as well. Very relevant question, technology and real estate. I don't know, never were obvious synonyms for sure. Technology and real estate were sort of poles apart for a lot of time, especially pre-pandemic. When a disaster situation happens, and when all the stakeholders of real estate eventually realize that everything else, every other medium to reach the customer has been blocked, or is of no significant use as of now, then obviously technology came into picture. And to be very honest, I think it was a forced way of implementation for a lot of stakeholders, from the developer side, from the broking houses side. I've been consulting both the sides, and trust me, to be very honest, initially it was largely felt as a forced implementation that, okay, abhi kuch nahi hai, then we have to implement technology. I'll be very honest with that. Technology for real estate stakeholders was largely limited to, at one point of time pre-pandemic, website, social media presence, digital lead generation, and digital lead generation means largely, Google, Facebook, that's it. Post-pandemic, yes, there was a total shift. Everything was happening with technology. Like he said, everything shifted to working in offices to work from home. Eventually, it was work from anywhere. I've seen now people working from cafes everywhere.
I've known people actually being in Goa. So I knew somebody said, "You're on going holiday." I said, "No, I'm working." But it's work from home, so you can work from actually anywhere, right?
So Deepak, I think that's a trend. People are posting selfies, from hill stations and all that stuff. So beaches and hill stations. So point was that people have shifted from work from home to work from anywhere now. And likewise, site visits, which actually had to happen at the sites because it is an asset class where people will still buy only after feel and touch. But site visits also had to happen anywhere, and that would even digitally. So technology came into aspect from that angle as well. How can we showcase our project, our configurations, 2 BHKs, 3 BHKs, 1 BHKs, whatever amenities, everything digitally to the client, wherever he's sitting. Whether he's sitting in Goa or
I think virtual walkthroughs were very
they were always present. So technology was always present in real estate. It was always there to be taken up. But as I said, the stakeholders were a little averse in the belief that technology could convert sales or increase the velocity of sales or enhance efficiency. But I think this whole shift because of the pandemic and the lockdown sort of forcefully made them adapt to it. Thankfully, after adapting, they've seen the efficiency increase, and we've seen good amount of sales in this lockdown. If you open any website and Google any sales of any developer or any broking house, I think a lot of them are boasting about good sales. And as Kamal also rightly said that surprisingly good numbers happened. Is because yes, obviously there was a big change in behavior of stakeholders, behavior of consumers, behavior in technology, and that has really now, shaped up the way real estate is taking up technology now. So it's no more just restricted to Facebook lead generation or having a website or having just social media pages, but now it is about adapting to the consumer's behavioral change to technology and how now you can showcase your product according to his behavior using any technology to make him make your product reach him and make him like your product and get him to your project either virtually or physically and make him take that decision. I think most of the times we've been successful in doing this in the last 9 to 10 months, but I think there's, as you said, the impact is still going on. It's not ended.
So I was reading an article some time back where I actually saw some numbers and I'll share with you. It was one of the largest broking houses, selling. So they said we initially had only 2% of our conversions through technology, through digital, conversions. Today, the number from 2% has gone up to 18%. Okay, conversions are 18% through. So, like you rightly mentioned, I think post-COVID, a lot of forced transformation has happened.
Correct. And Deepak, this is here to stay.
Absolutely.
This is not something which was a stopgap, thing that we used technology when we had to, and now we're not going to do that.
It's a new normal.
This is the new normal. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. You would like to, yeah. Please, Chaitanya.
Just to add, I think completely agree with what Yash said. A few things which we observed during the COVID time. Obviously, it's a touch and feel product. Unless you visit the site, aap kharidoge nahi. And typically, on an average, it required 3 site visits to do a conclusion or to take a buy. And in the COVID, even after opening the lockdown, that has consistently come down to 1.5 site visits. What 1.5 site visit, 1.5 site visits kahan gaya? That is only being taken by platforms that are digitally available. So today, the entire awareness, research, even the kind of negotiations, lot of things are being actually taken over digital platforms. I think I must congratulate the industry, the way the industry kind of shown a lot of resilience in terms of moving to digital platforms. Probably Zoom and Teams were not even heard of. I think became a normal choice to interact with their customers, with the channel partners. So 2 points to it. One, I would say customer anyways always was digitally savvy. I'm not saying you make a booking. Now even the booking is happening, almost the booking, the EOIs are happening on digital platforms. But customers always were digital savvy. It's about what Yash rightly said. It's developers taking that belief that digital platforms can make a significant difference. So website, what he talked about in a pre-COVID era, websites were used as a publishing engine. Lead aa gaya to aa gaya.
True.
Today, they are the biggest source of lead generation. Second, there is a biggest source of lead engagement. Today, people are talking about what's my form fill ratio. I think that the days have completely changed where they clearly see their cost of acquisition of customers have come down significantly.
Very valid point.
And if you look at it in a normal, while you talked about 2% to 18%, I have seen the marketing spends significantly moving towards digital.
Yeah.
And even the conversions per se, what were happening, I think has significantly moved up.
Absolutely. I think fantastic point. I think you want to add your 2 bits on this because on the manufacturing from the developer side, Harshal and Kamlesh bhai.
See, as a management student, all of us have heard the cases, you know, the Harvard cases and all.
Sure.
Mobile phone and camera. The
Absolutely.
fringe
Absolutely.
benefit of having a cell phone with a built-in camera immediately had an impact on all those DSLRs of the world.
Sure.
The lockdown has taken the print media a big blow. It's given them a big blow. You know, as a developer for us, any project launch, the industry leaders, Times of India's of the world, like we had to be there. They were expensive print medias which we had to put. The impact was limited. But it was only tried and tested method. With the lockdown period, with the papers not being going to the houses, and people having WhatsApp forwards of the newspapers, which became a nuisance. And
That's a new
spam.
norm, I should say that.
Yeah.
People are used to now reading
Yeah.
on WhatsApp.
But कितने पेपर पढ़ लोगे? आपके 20 पेपर आ रहे थे WhatsApp पे. So then suddenly people, like he said, we were pushed to a technology which existed. Zooms of the world were there, but they became forced on us. But we adapted very fast, and it helped us reprioritize our spending. And the effectiveness of this new medium was undoubted, and it proved. And now people have found the optimization of unnecessary spending on print media and broadcasting in the general market vis-a-vis going to the target market. So people are learning. So I agree with Yash what he says, that these things which have changed are going to stay forever.
Forever. Absolutely. I think so COVID, so this is one of the boons of having COVID.
I think one single biggest takeaway for me is, see, earlier buying a flat was, you know, people would come with their families and they would flock the sites on weekends, etc. But now clearly the biggest game changer is that people are going to shortlist you digitally. So if, you know, this whole trend around having sample flats, etc., I think now you need to have that digital sample flat, or your digital presence is so much more important because you're not going to be shortlisted otherwise. And forget people visiting your site casually. I think they're going to shortlist you first digitally, and then they're going to move actually to the site. So I think that is the biggest takeaway for me in this pandemic.
I think fantastic. I think amazing points. I think technology is here to stay, as we all say. And as humans, I think till we are forced to do something, we are pushed against the wall. You know, we don't adapt. And I think the whole sector, I think this is one of the last sectors to, and one of the largest employment generation sectors to adapt. And I'm sure this change is going here to stay. You know, so those are the boons of COVID. I actually say that. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Thank you. I think it's very, very nice to hear these lovely answers. Coming to the next question, Yash, you can take this, and then remaining panelists can definitely add on because this is very important. How can we simplify the lives of NRIs actually? You know, this is one dominant player, you know, who always are looking back to invest back in their own hometown and country. And did we see them participate enough in the momentum recovery that picked up? due to the stamp duty reduction. So because this whole frenzy that moved up, did we see enough participation coming from the NRIs? And how do we make the lives easier?
Definitely, Deepak. We definitely saw a lot of participation from the NRI segment. Two, three reasons. One, the basic asset class, as you rightly said, Roti Kapda Makan. You know, it was, I mean, just if we just take our own examples, you know, at whatever structure we were, last April, when we had only 2 hours to step out of the house and, you know, just fill or stock whatever we could, we were all running helter-skelter to buy the basics, right? I mean, it was milk, Amul butter, grains, food grains, cereals, whatever we could, which had longer shelf life and, you know, which were basic necessities. Obviously, we couldn't do that for housing, though it was a basic necessity, but the intensity of the need for that product was shot up, for sure. I mean, the way we all ran in those 1 or 2 hours or made our people run in those 1 or 2 hours to fill the stocks of the house, the intensity of housing, especially housing, and even commercial for that matter. I mean, businessmen obviously thought from that angle as well, that, you know, if I'm going to spend so much on rent, and many people lost a lot of money in rents, you know, be it commercial, shops, offices, or residential in this pandemic, because there was no clarity on, you know, I mean, there was a waiver on EMIs, or there was at least a moratorium on EMIs, but not on rent. There was no clarity on that. So people lost a lot of money on that, and the intensity shot up. Now, intensity of domestic people shot up. Now just imagine an NRI whose eventual roots are in the country. The intensity for him shot up multifolds, you know. And people who were, you know, fence-sitting, the NRI segment I'm talking about, the people, NRIs who were fence-sitting or thinking that maybe, you know, there's no hurry, I might wait for another year, let me see what happens. The fence-sitting, if it happened on the domestic target segment, the fence-sitting happened drastically on the NRI target segment, because everyone then eventually felt that now if I could rush home, you know, only if I could rush home and only if I would have had a home to rush to, first thing. This shot up. You know, this shot up the intensity of the demand for real estate for NRI segment. We saw a lot of participation. Now, the only problem was, as you said, the question, the main question, the ease. That, unfortunately, is lacking. Okay, there is no clarity on documentation. There's no clarity on how they can invest back in India, how much they can invest back in India, what are the regulations for taxations, capital gains. There, I think the stakeholders have to, you know, pull up their socks and create awareness in the NRI segment, especially. See, we see a lot of awareness campaigns in all the other industries. You know, we see awareness campaigns through telecommunication industry. They make aware the consumers about a lot of, you know, mishaps that happen. Even in the pandemic, you saw a lot of, because cyber crimes increased in the pandemic. And, you know, all these industries, they made a lot of awareness campaigns, no sales campaigns, just awareness campaigns for the target segment. Unfortunately, real estate, there's still no awareness campaigns. We have a regulator now, but I see a little bit of, you know, maybe obviously the groundwork has to be done first and then they will rise up to the level of awareness campaigns, but I think it's time. NRIs, many of them, when we are targeting and we saw a lot of shot up in the intensity of demand from NRIs also. Many of them have not been taking decisions for a long, long time because there's no clarity on documentation. There's no clarity of how much they can invest. There's no clarity of how much of, you know, of taxation, double taxation, how much tax can they save, what are the rules on capital gains. No clarity. The problem is that there are very few people in the industry who can actually explain those norms as well. So I think the stakeholders, the broking houses, the salespeople of broking houses, the salespeople of the developers, they'll have to sort of pull up their socks and get a clarity on these, on the legal, on technical, on documentation, on taxation, because real estate sale for NRIs is just not the structure and the house. It's also about all of this. And if this is covered, this part is covered, then there'll be a lot of ease. Otherwise, technology is such right now. All the other industries have adapted to technology decades before real estate has. So on the payment side, there's no you know, obstacles. It's very seamless, actually.
Sure.
On documentation, it's seamless, but the awareness is not seamless right now. That's what I feel. And I think if we can do that as stakeholders, that will generate a lot of NRI sales, because NRIs are looking to invest back in India. Their roots are here. They want a house. They were panicking in a state where they wanted to rush back to India, but they could not. They're still wanting to. And a 2% increase in stamp duty is not going to hamper their decisions, at least,
Absolutely.
I'm
No,
sure.
no, yeah.
So that is one segment which will still give sales in these coming 3
I
4
think
months.
that segment needs to be nurtured upon, because what I understand is, being there, people who are overseas have multiple options and opportunities to invest across the globe, in UK properties, and in Dubai itself, the rental yields, the market is completely beaten down, it's a free fall market compared to our market, which kind of holds on the prices. But I guess the options are very, very there abroad, when you meet another client. So how do we attract them and, kind of lure them to ensure we get enough participation? Because I think that's a huge untapped market, though everybody wants to come back to the roots. But I think there's still much more potential, and they could definitely be more participative. I mean, you want to throw some light on that?
I think very clearly, as Indians, whether, we are living here or abroad, we take decisions from our heart, and real estate decisions are often taken by heart, because if you look at the yields or the interest rate that you are paying, you'll never be able to take a decision from your mind if you go actually to buy real estate, especially in India. So I think targeting the emotional part of the whole context is very important, rather than just making it pure black and white, because that's one thing which really pulls and really connects across to NRIs. That is one. Second, especially when it comes to NRIs, they are more interested in taking good care of their dependents. So at least I witnessed a lot of sales of NRIs happening where they were buying, bigger space, luxurious space for their dependents. So for their parents, etc. And where they didn't mind buying an extra bedroom, just merely to keep it for once a year whenever they come. So I think those two angles would be extremely crucial. But yeah, we have a long way to go so far as the NRI segment goes. And this is despite the rupee situation supporting them.
Yeah, true.
Despite
Absolutely,
that, if it's not really turning, I think we clearly have a lot of room way to
ground
make.
to cover, yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, please, Chaitanya. Kamlesh ji.
See, I will tell you from the industry perspective. We have been thrown with a lot of challenges. Our industry has been historically suffering from credibility crisis.
Absolutely.
Let's admit this.
Absolutely.
There is no shy, and let's not deny this. Come out of this denial.
Absolutely.
NRIs were one of the early markets which we had tapped in the 2090s, and we saw a lot of success. A lot of developers saw a lot of success. Unfortunately, their experiences have pushed them away. And the evolution has taken place. The industry has seen from demonetization to RERA to GST. So as an industry person, I know how much cleansing the systems the industry is going through. The entry barriers are being created. RERA has disciplined, and the biggest is the resolutions, which litigations used to drag for years. Now with the RERA coming and deciding the matters in the interest of investors and the consumers, has given them a reason to give this industry one more chance. As an industry body, since I'm part of NAREDCO also, we have been having multiple investor summit forums where we invite international fund managers and the investors, and we educate them, update them, like you were saying, create an awareness kind of thing. And the process is going on. And with the use of technology, which we just discussed, which has been thrown open, I think our penetration will be deeper and to the larger and vast audience. And I hope very soon this also will be dealt properly, and the confidence of NRIs, which has taken a blow in the earlier, maybe say 1.0.
You hit the nail right on the, coffin, because that's where, a lot of people have been badly bruised. The trust has been broken. They've got invested into projects which has never seen the light of the day, like you rightly mentioned. So I think that's where, after what Yash has said and what Harshal has said, I think it's bang on.
So these challenges have taken out all the boys and only men have to. So now it's separated.
Absolutely. I think
You know,
RERA has been a pleasant
so the
play.
And these multiple challenges from DMON to RERA to GST, now it's a serious players game. वो दिन गए कि आपने प्लॉट खरीदा, बोर्ड लगाया, माल बेचा, फिर
Big क्या माल.
नहीं होगा. Now you have to perform or perish.
Absolutely. I think fantastic points. Yeah, Chaitanya.
No, I think
Your thoughts?
just mentioned that. So, couple of points. One, if you look at the first 6 months of COVID, if you look at some of the listed developers, they had 1/3 or more than 1/3 of the sale coming from NRI. So it only talked about the fact that the market was pretty much there and they were able to kind of convert that. I'll just build on to what Kamlesh ji said. Is that the biggest challenge for NRI is the trust. So how can you kind of eliminate the trust deficit boundary and kind of create that level of trust, because they will tend to go with the developers whom they can trust, ye project complete karega, or maybe my money is safe at the end of the day. So either they will go to an RTMI kind of a thing that, okay, I know for the fact what I'm trying to go about, or maybe I'll go with the developer where I can trust about the excellence. To be honest, I think as a developer, the basic thing is what I'm promising, I'm delivering. If you're able to deliver, and that's what RERA is supposed to help, the entire focus of the entire plunge coming from the NRI market can actually kind of catapult the demand. If you look at a lot of developers, around 5 to 15% of their sales who have really focused on this market have actually generated from the NRI market. So I think it's a big thing. And technology, in my view, is again a lever which actually increases trust. Trust comes by the fact, are you available? Are you accessible? And are you providing me all the information which is required? And there's no other platform like technology which actually gives this entire trail. And that's where I think we have seen phenomenal amount of engagement with the NRI set of customers and actual conversions happening.
Fantastic. I think fantastic points by all the panelists, and thank you for enlightening us. My next question, I think, is pretty interesting, and this, Harshal, I would want you to take this. REITs, the new thing, the new fad that has come in, right? What are your views? How will they impact the physical real estate? I also have a question which I think I'm going to bunk into this, and maybe you can speak on that as well. The fractional ownership, is that the future of owning real estate going forward?
So REITs is a topic dear to me. This was a topic on which I did my PhD thesis upon also. This was way back 2014 when the concept was still dangling with government and taxation issues. 2.62 lakh crore, that is the estimated market for REIT.
Wow.
289 million square foot, that is the market we are talking about. It's a concept which is more than 50 years old in US. We've just witnessed 3 listings so far. The potential you can judge from a sense when the entire world was talking about work from home scenario, the IT giants had come forward saying that they will move 80%, 90% of their staff to remote working, and office space, especially IT office space, is done and dusted with. Came a REIT IPO by a prominent developer, and which was oversubscribed.
Absolutely. I mean, that
Oversubscribed. So that is, and that is right in the midst of a storm where the concept credibility, this was the perfect test. We've seen 3 IPOs, all 3 of them have been oversubscribed. It has tremendous potential. And all the tier 1 cities, especially Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, Mumbai, Pune, 80 to 90% of the REITable assets fall in these tier 1 cities. And this will attract a new form of capital. So investors, both institutional and individual, which was slowly fading away from real estate, I think with the advent of REITs, these investors will come back, especially due to the whole listing advantage, with SEBI being into fray, regular monthly income coming in the form of dividend, and easy liquidity. So I think these are all couple of points which will help, and this transforms the game for real estate, for physical real estate, and especially its ownership pattern. The shortcomings with REITs being a new concept, of course, the safeguards which were put by the government was the size of the asset. So you needed an asset which was more than 1 million square foot for it to list. in a city like Mumbai, that
becomes
kind
a
of
little
potential being available is difficult.
Difficult, yeah.
Which gave rise to an alternate platform called fractional ownership. So, very 40,000 square foot, square feet view around the whole concept. Fractional ownership is nothing but a REIT which is not listed. It's unorganized. There are many platforms which are coming up, but this has clearly been again a preferred form of ownership of assets. So both these concepts, you could say clearly are offshoots of the pandemic, and this is only here to grow further.
Absolutely. I think what I also understand is because of the participation in the sector, owning a physical real estate, you go to really pump in a lot of money, and this, with I think 25 lakhs is the minimum entry ticket size.
You'd be surprised. You needed nothing less than 1 crore to own real estate, plus
Absolutely.
the risk of vacancy and putting it on rent, interacting with local consultants, etc. Now today, merely with 1 lakh rupee through a fractional ownership platform or through merely 25 lakhs rupees on a REIT platform, you could participate and own grade A commercial real estate, which otherwise would be absolutely difficult. And we are talking professionally managed trillion-dollar worth funds, owning and managing these assets.
So that's opened up the whole spectrum for you, right?
Absolutely. For me, this is one trail which is going to be the biggest game changer for Indian real estate in the days to come. We've seen green offshoots, even in the midst of pandemic and in the midst of storm. But I think going further, the future lies ahead.
Absolutely.
There will be a format of private REITs, which will also soon come. So developers, instead of listing their brands, and a lot of developers have not been successful in listing their brands, could actually look to list their projects. So projects listing is nothing but REITs, and that is where, instead of looking at LRDs or, mortgaging, they could raise equity from the market and only offload out as much stake as much they want the cash flow to come in without losing the control of the asset. So I think from an equity perspective, this is a great vehicle, and in days coming ahead, you will listen more about this.
I think you rightly mentioned it's being the pandemic, people not coming up and opening up. We had IPOs getting oversubscribed. So I think we've seen what it actually means and how people have reciprocated to the entire thing. So it's here to stay and here to grow. And we've just hit the tip of the iceberg. I can just say that. So it's a huge, huge market that can open up for the real estate industry. You guys want to add in something here?
See, in the pandemic, how much retail participation happened in equity market?
Right, sir.
सारे लोग घर पे बैठे बैठे चलो शेयर डाल देते.
Yeah.
So fraction ownership or REITs.
Yes, sir.
Is the way ahead. Crowdfunding is the way ahead.
Absolutely, sir.
So everybody wants to be part of this grade A level,
Right.
And pandemic has also given a big blow to retail, malls and cinemas. We all know it. But it has opened up opportunities in warehousing, which is the new opportunities being created with the Amazons and online platforms coming. So they have a huge amount of requirement for warehousing, and with the so new opportunities are opening in real estate. Again, when warehousing, fraction ownership is big thing which is catching, and a lot of developers are shifting their focus to warehousing now.
In fact, that was my next question, warehousing and logistics, how are we looking at that? And I had another question about the malls, revival of malls and retail outlets. We see a lot of huge showrooms on Linking Road, going empty, with now more being aligned to Amazons and the Flipkarts of the world. Will that era come back, or now it's kind of gone for good?
So I'll give you 5 interesting trends over here. On a typical high street in Mumbai, the rentals we are talking is north of 300 rupees per square foot on carpet.
Right.
For a typical warehouse in Bhiwandi, for example, the rentals are 20 to 25 rupees. This is less than 10%. An average cost of labor in Mumbai would be to the tune of 25 to 30,000 rupees. The warehousing hubs have a close proximity of satellite cities of Thane, Navi Mumbai, which has developed, which gives room to new labor, which is extremely efficient and low cost, relatively. If you own a shop, there are stocking costs, there is electricity costs, there are various overheads which you are hitting around with. When you own a warehouse, it's a simple structure which is in the form of shed. And we are talking of these warehouse hubs which are merely 37 kilometers from the heart of the city. So within the day, in 2 hours, you could do a to and fro. And look at the distribution network. It's flat. I mean, otherwise, in a traditional distribution chain, if you are buying from a mom and pop store, we are talking of at least 5 levels of distribution. Now, given these 5 trends and the kind of cycle time it takes to make a warehouse, I think clearly it's the writing on the wall. The alternate asset class of warehousing is there to stay. In fact, there are warehouses which have become profit centers.
Absolutely,
So instead of owning an office space in, say, for example, Wagle Estate, IT Park, there are these digital platform players which are creating something like a loft. Because remember, warehouse is a structure which is quite tall. So they create an office space within the warehouse, hence actually saving upon rent. So each warehouse that they occupy, that's not a cost center, it's actually a profit center.
Fantastic. I think
And
great insights.
And given the whole technology push given to the warehousing, they are able to cut 70 to 80% of the distribution costs right away. Wow. So in terms of expansion, in terms of future, I think all trades will look at a hub and spoke model where these shops would merely be from a hoarding perspective or an advertisement perspective, but from a serious trade or business model perspective,
That
I
shift
think
is
warehouse
already-
is going to be the asset of the future.
Is here to stay. Fantastic. I think. Anybody wants to add in here?
So, I can't agree more than what he said. A simple example, a layman, a cloud kitchen arrival. The way restaurants have been moved towards cloud
Absolutely,
kitchen.
yeah,
It's the simplest of the example in terms of the way consumers are consuming and are open to the idea. And warehouse, data centers, co-working, co-living are all real estate 2.0. I think that's the way the industry and the consumers are going towards. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think a lot of insights into this, and we'll be looking actually at the trends of the future. So thank you for your great insights. Coming to the next question for the panelist, Kamlesh bhai, you can take this. What's the future of, like we actually had this discussion, I mean, just this question actually answer cropped up. What's the future of commercial real estate? And actually everybody's been harping on that. Will work from home trend impact the commercial real estate market? That's on everybody's mind actually, yeah. Yeah. Or, will the bounce back, will it come in commercial, or, will the market be?
Yeah, see, work from home is very convenient for many people. It saves a lot of extra hours of traveling in this mad city
Sure.
like Mumbai.
Sure.
Especially. And you go to Bangalore, you go to Hyderabad, the amount of traveling
Much less.
and the efficiency of people when they are given a choice to work from home, from the convenience of their time, because now you are moving from physical hours to a task-driven model. And the technology is again ensuring that the productivity and everything is monitored and progress is seen. But coming back to thing that any excesses which is defying your natural behavior ultimately pushes you back. So I have seen, and this discussion is going on in our industry also, many of the people, they are eager to get back to their offices.
Yeah.
Working from home in pajamas is not something which we humans are very comfortable with. It started with a lot of convenience and happiness, but eventually, getting back to your disciplined life and going back to your workplace, maybe not the way we used to do fully, maybe partially or intermittently, is going to happen. People want to go back to workplaces, and commercial spaces will be
back
there.
Back in action, back in
Yes,
demand.
yes.
Fantastic. Please.
So I think yes, work from home is a phenomenon which is a permanent change. Now just let's try and understand what that it might mean. I think it will mean different things for different industries. So if you look at any financial services, technology industries or service industry, you will find some of the roles where the transition will happen anything between 5 to 25%, which essentially would mean that there will be kind of a hotspots which will get created. So there will be some level of vacancy or release which will happen. Now it would mean two things. One, that it might also mean that people start getting into a satellite model kind of an office, which might mean more absorption of co-working space wherein people can start looking at an office environment. And I think I can't agree more that it's not the convenience of working from home, it's also about social collaboration, which is extremely important. And in absence of that, you actually find productivity levels come down. I am sure across industries we witnessed in the COVID that people slogged multiple hours. But was that a real productivity jump? I think it's a debatable point, right? So I think how do you strike that balance between the two? So more often than not, I'm finding a lot of corporate houses kind of looking at a release of some level of bandwidth from their commercial assets, but the same point in time trying to create a hub and spoke kind of a model which allows still the growth of the commercial asset class. It would also mean that a lot of commercial asset class will also go into some level of variabilization in their spaces. So today probably it's more like a fixed lease or fixed space they are leasing out. It might also mean that probably I carve out a 10 to 20% and create that form of a flexible kind of an asset. And more absorption I expect to happen in the tier 1 asset. I'm also finding that from a tier 2 asset class, a lot of people are putting in effort to move towards a tier 1 asset class. Because while the employees are coming to that asset class, their expectation is to have far more safer, far more hygienic, far more inclusive kind of environment. I think that's again a shift from a product development. And if you look at some of the largest of the commercial players, especially in the Bangalore market, I think I've clearly seen their product definition getting a complete shift from a post-COVID era on that perspective.
Fantastic. I think great thoughts coming here. Thank you for this, Chaitanya and Kamleshi. I think this question, I'm sure a lot of people will want to have an answer and know what's in store. What will be the impact of 50% premium reduction on new launches that we've seen, that's been passed by the government? Do we see the benefit being passed on to consumers? Will the prices soften actually?
Best answer, yes.
Definitely yes. This 50% is a cash flow challenge which we had as an industry, which was upfront. Builders have been blamed that they sell castles in air, but we were taxed for those castles which we built in air on the day of planning. True. So this 50% has definitely helped us save and improve our cash flows at the time of planning the project. And the reality is that the markets are made with demand and supply.
Absolutely.
So the ultimate objective of government, which I foresee, is going to happen. It is going to see the fruits because their objective was to support an industry which was taken a head blow due to this COVID and the pandemic and the lockdown. So they wanted to support the industry, enable it to rise back on its feet, which they did by dropping the price of premium. But while doing that, this small rider of absorption of stamp duty and absorbing the cost, we have done the math. As a developer, the benefit is nothing but a cash flow. But the amount of discounts which you are eventually forced by the government rider to the end user is actually triggering the sales which we have all seen. And what it does, it created a situation where a lot of stuck projects which were seeing unviability as a reason and they were sinking in this endless loop of affordability suddenly have become viable for a developer. More the projects getting launched, more the supply, markets are again going.
So are we only looking at new launches, this being passed on to the new launches, or existing projects also
existing projects also and the new launches both were covered under this scheme.
Right.
What I am trying to say, the existing projects, there was a developer's challenge of viability. The amount of premiums that we were paying at the end of the project.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it was leaving a red balance sheet.
Absolutely.
Today, government has helped you to see that those projects are completed with the reduction. It's a specific time for which they gave this offer, and with so many projects, new projects getting launched in this period has created a possibility of so much stock coming in next 2 years, which will again help the stability in the prices. Because again, I'm saying the markets are made with the demand and supply. The amount of supply which you are going to see after 2 years is also, you have to keep an eye. And then the objective of government is to see that affordability of the housing. Housing is a necessity. Roti kapda.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Affordability of housing is maintained.
Yeah.
Shortages of houses is going to create artificial uptick in the pricing. Nobody is beneficiary. Builders are also losing.
Absolutely.
When there is a traction in the market, when there is affordability, more consumers are coming forward and taking the plunge, purchasing, and the projects are getting through. So it's win-win for all of us. So it's a great thing which Maharashtra government has done. And we really have made a lot of representation to central government also on the same, on the GST front, which we are hoping.
I think Narodco's been a very, very dominant player in
Yes.
the stamp duty reduction also coming through and this premiums coming through.
So
So, I
again,
think, thank you, sir, for this and
So
thank you so much.
It is one of those Zoom calls which Deepak Parekh sir was there on the call, and Aditya Thackeray sir was there, and a lot of industry leaders were there across India, and requests were being made, and probably again the effectiveness of being sitting in Delhi, Mumbai, you know, all parts of India, and the ministries in their respective chambers, and everybody came together. Again, a benefit of having the technology, and the representations were made, proper presentations were done, and consents were granted, and that's what happened.
Fantastic. But I think it's a great push that Narodco actually did. A great job you guys did, sir. Thank you so much. Harshal?
So I have a slightly different view on the whole subject. See, what has happened with this whole 50% premium reduction is press jumped the gun over here. So even before the Gazette was out, the notification was out, 1 month before, press started painting its own version. And you know, the way press writes it, you know, one opinion from some commissioner here and there, one opinion from some UD secretary, and they started painting the town red that now 50% prices will come down instead of 50% premium reduction. So from a stakeholder perspective, whether it is buyers or whether it is, you know, layman wanting their society to be redeveloped, suddenly they all started thinking that now, you know, developers have this magic wand from Harry Potter where, you know, suddenly the entire Mumbai real estate scenario will change, which was not actually the case. What has happened with this whole circular is that there is no definitive, clear understanding which is given. See, one, as real estate developers, we are so used to not getting benefits from the government that anything that comes, you know, across from the government is very welcome a move. But we need to understand that in Bombay, there are at least 10 different types of developments which happen. So for example, in the island city, you have cess redevelopment, wherein premiums is any which way is a very less component because you do a massive amount of rehabilitation. You have the SRA form of development, you have the Mahada layout form of development, you have non-cess development, you have open land developments. Each of these, the premium structures are very different. That is to be appreciated, one. Second, there are certain projects. So we do a lot of work in South Central Bombay, and wherein we saw the merit of taking this particular 50% reduction was not as much as compared to what we had to give back, which is in terms of absorbing the stamp duty and the corresponding GST. Because suddenly, now this all-inclusive term with customers is going to be very common now. Now the problem with this particular circular is that whether I'm going to take the benefit of the premium reduction or the so-called benefit, the market is suddenly going to come from June where every developer is going to say, now this is an all-inclusive price. Customers are not going to really bother about knowing whether you've taken the benefit or not, or what's the benefit. So suddenly now you have a 6% dent on your margin, because any which ways, today is the last day of the stamp duty rebate. So we're going to go back to your 5% and 6% regime. And 5-6% of the top line is a massive dent when you talk about you know, your margins of a developer, which are measly in single digit. The entire industry, cement, steel, etc., have been able to escalate their prices, but real estate developers been one which has not been really able to push the envelope and increase prices. So net-net, what happens with this whole environment is suddenly there is this sentiment which is dwelling that despite the government doing so much for the developer is not reducing the price. When actually the case in point is that there is already an offset present in the same policy which says that you need to include the stamp duty. Now the problem is to understand so much, to decipher so much. Media which is actually writing the article also needs to go through the circular and know the nuances, which doesn't happen. But a easier good headline is that the government has supported developers with 50% reduction.
Because that actually plays on the mind of the consumer there, right? I mean, he's reading it, he's saying 50% reduction ho gaya, so I'm going to get the benefit passed on to me.
And the problem is on dual side, right? The problem is on demand as well as supply side.
Absolutely.
So your customer is going to ask you for an all-inclusive price, not really caring that whether what cycle of the project are you in. It's going to be an all-inclusive price, mind you. Second, the new societies that you are going to approach, they suddenly say, "Yaar, your project is so viable now, why aren't you taking it?" Not really understanding what is the GST impact on the whole situation, what is the stamp duty impact. And out of some 30, 40 different types of premiums, is 50% the case in point for all 30 types of premiums, or is it case in point only for 5 or 6 types of premiums? So that is also to be understood, but that kind of fine-bred nuances are not there. And we as developers somewhere feel that if we become too vocal about this, whatever is given also will be taken away. So we might as well rather be silent about this. And instead of, explaining, so suddenly there is this aura that everything is very good, everything is... And I can show you at least 4 calculations wherein taking 50% reduction is actually going to cause you loss. I'm using the word loss. I'm not using the word profit or benefit, because you have to read the circular in totality. You also have to offset for the stamp duty inclusion that's going to happen.
Harshul, the caveat is this was not mandatory. This scheme of 50% reduction was optional.
Optional, okay.
The government came out with an offer on the table. Okay, I dropped the taxes, I dropped the premiums. What is it that my end user, my consumer, my citizen of the city are going to be? So this is an optional scheme to you. Whether you want to opt it, do your math. If it's viable to you, take a plunge. If it's not viable, continue. But we cannot take away the credit from the government that they thought of this.
Absolutely.
The idea of wanting to knock off 50% of the premium is a big thought process for which I think we must give credit to government, the state government, and the people involved in the decision-taking process. Yes, I agree with you. It's a revenue neutral thing for the developers. I still maintain that we did not make any profit. All of us know it from the industry. It was a revenue neutral scheme. But what it did is it helped me in my cash flow. What I mentioned is that it helped me in my cash flow at the planning stage. Today, while making a proposal, I was made to pay 100. Today, I'm being made to pay 50. Maybe out of 30 premiums, 10 premiums, 12 premiums. But that cash flow is significant reduction, which in the eventuality of the customer's sales, we will absorb the stamp duty or whatever prices you are saying. I agree. But what has happened, it has kick-started the economy. That's the objective of government. There was a stagnancy in the market. They have to kick-start by putting the right thing in front of you.
Absolutely.
Kickstart, this is the objective which they had. I think they achieved it. All of us who had otherwise no ways of reaching out to making those premiums of crores of rupees upfront at the sanctioning of plan, we could do it. We could take that leap of faith, and we are seeing the results.
I think fantastic insights from both Kamlesh Bhai and Harshul. I think fantastic insights. I think we now actually know what is the inside story of the 50% reduction. But thank you so much for your answers. I think both the answers were fantastic and were extremely relevant to the point. Coming to the next question, I think this is again a question which I think everybody, I'm sure all of us want to know, is the stamp duty rebate comes to an end today. How do you anticipate markets moving from here on? Will the frenzy come to actually an end, or will we continue this momentum?
See, it's going to be crystal ball gazing here, because clearly the sales that have happened so far are the fence sitters which have actually bought. So the people which are actually COVID impacted, who've lost jobs, people who've had salary cuts, all those audience have still not really jumped into the market. So whatever sales we've witnessed in these last 2 quarters are principally, if you open any developer's sales book, almost 60-70% of those sales are people who've been looking for a house for 1 to 2 years. So it is purely crystal ball gazing what is going to happen. In fact, on WhatsApp, a lot of rounds are doing around restrictions or semi-lockdown sort of a situation. Yeah. So once Today evening, you know,
Get
this
a
whole
clarity, yeah.
rebate is off, and what April really holds for is going to be astrology in my sense, but it's going to be difficult
A tough
because
one, yeah,
most of the people who had that cash reserve, who had the saving made, who had sold their property and who wanted to buy a residential accommodation, they've already done their decision. And new people, I don't think are going to jump into fray so early, especially with this. We are recording more than 500 registrations per day. That is the average
Wow.
of MMR presently in the month of
Wow.
March. So
That's
from 1st
awesome.
March to 24th March, whatever data is out, 500 plus registrations happening per day.
The numbers have actually, 92% of sales have come pre-COVID levels.
Absolutely.
With 23% coming from the MMR region actually.
So it's like whenever government gives a rebate, and no matter developer might have pushed the price down by 10% or 20%, but even 2 or 3% coming from government, I think the sentiment
Has
has
completely
got
uplifted,
such
yeah.
a big euphoria that everyone's bought a property. So now suddenly what happens in this 9 months is going to be very interesting. More so April-May period, which
Yeah.
is where the second wave of COVID or the second round of restrictions will create an impact.
Sure.
So that is yet to be seen. But I think most of the developers are in green given the healthy 5-month scenario. So I think we do have that buffer margin to really.
I think that's
sustain
been a
on.
big blessing with the numbers trickling in. A lot of developers and the industry which was bleeding has actually got a sign of fresh lease coming in. And I think now it's going to be quite interesting to see how the trends move from here on. So we all pray that the momentum and the frenzy continues.
I would like to add to this.
Yeah, Kamlesh bhai.
See, as we were discussing, it's an evolution process.
Right.
From an era of plus base rate and plus rates, we have moved to a box rate. All of us know about this.
Sure.
From era of credibility crisis of a developer to a transparency, we are moving. Why? We have to go into the reasons of why there was so many people sitting on fence. Until you identify that there was a demand, roti kapda makan, which we Chaitanya Harsh was saying, it has always existed. We have to go and do a little bit of soul searching, introspection, why these consumers were sitting on fence. Affordability, credibility, or failure of deliverability. There were a lot of reasons. And confusion. We developers add to that to confusion. Built up area, super built up area, plus charges. Consumers were always panicking. They were not sure whether they are taking a right decision or not. What this has done is an era of all-inclusive pricing has at least taken away some confusion. This RERA has streamlined the way you define your carpet areas, built-up areas, so it has streamlined the processes. The credibility has been addressed by giving you a disclosure online on the portal. Any builder which you go online on the RERA site, you can see the date of completion and what is the penal clauses. It is very well clearly defined. Number of sales he has made, you can see how many vacancies are there, you can see
Absolutely,
online.
yeah,
So the amount of transparency, the industry is also evolving. And again, I say the boys are being separated from the men.
Absolutely, sir.
So my take is, though stamp duty withdrawal, if it happens today and the government does not continue, it was only to kickstart the economy. We have to play this game by the rules of the game, and we have to be ready to cater to the consumer, and consumers have started getting the faith, A, in the sector, B, in the developer. So your sales are going to come and take place. Don't feel that it was a pent up only. I feel that this ice has been broken. Both the people, buyer and the seller, were holding their forts individually, but both were not moving a step ahead. What this government has done by creating these triggers, small triggers and small incentivizing, they have created an atmosphere where both have taken step forward and shaken hands, and I think this collaboration is going to continue.
Thank you so much. I think we've got some more questions, but I guess we've come to a halt of the session. So we've jumped the timelines. So thank you so much, panelists. I think it was wonderful hearing all of you. And thank you, audience. I'm sure it answered a lot of your queries and questions. I'm sure you guys benefited a lot. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.